Thank you. And again, welcome to everyone to Clatsop Community College. We're pleased to be able to host this. This evening, we'll hear from 7 candidates, 2 candidates for state representative, 2 candidates for Astoria Council's Ward 2, and 3 candidates for Astoria Council's Ward 4. We'll introduce those folks in a moment. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement, and then I will be asking the candidates a series of 5 questions, as was mentioned earlier, submitted previously by members of the public. At the end of the candidate's time, they will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. We will start with the candidates for State Representative District 32. We will then move on to candidates for Astoria City Council Ward 2, and then end the evening with candidates for Astoria City Council Ward 4. So without any further ado, I'd like to get started. We have our candidates for State Representative District 32 at the podium. Debbie Boothe-Schmidt, the Democratic candidate, and Suzanne Weber, the Republican candidate. Debbie, begin with your opening statement.
Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Debbie Boothe-Schmidt, and I am running for House District 32. I have lived in rural Oregon for most of my life. I moved here to the North Coast 29 years ago as a single mom, raising 2 girls on my own. I had to work 2 jobs to make ends meet, and I had to make those tough decisions on whether to put food on the table or take my kids to the doctor when needed. I feel I was one of the lucky ones. I was able to get a job and join a union. We had health care at that time. I've also been able to obtain a small business. The union didn't just give me job security. It gave me the opportunity to become a leader and an advocate for community members, and also inspired me to advocate for our public transportation. I still remember how it was when we first moved here and the struggles that we went through. And there are still families struggling now with the high cost of housing, with the high cost of health care. I want everyone to be able to wake up in the morning and have food on the table, a roof over their heads, health care, mental health care, and schools to go to. I will represent this district because this district has given me so much, and I want to give back. Thank you.
Suzanne, with your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in northern Minnesota. I moved to Oregon to teach in 1970. I was just going to stay here for a little while. And here it is 50 years later. I'm still here. I love the people. I love the area. I taught 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades and a special class at Wilson School, which is just about a half a block from my house, for 30 years. I love my job, and I still maintain a lot of friendships with my former students. My sister-in-law and I have had 2 small businesses. One was Tea and Cakes. It was a cake and catering business, which we had for 10 years. And then we had a retail business in downtown Tillamook for 8 years called Cordelia's. And let me tell you, we learned a lot about the challenges of running a small business. I have 2 children, 3 stepdaughters, and 9 wonderful grands. And I call them grands because that's what they are. I was married for 39 years to my husband, Tom, who gave me a new appreciation for farming and the forest and for trucking and the fire department, and he was also an avid sports fisherman. I lost him to pancreatic cancer in 2015. Politically speaking, I was a city councilor in Tillamook, and then I decided to run for mayor. I have had 2 full terms, and I'm in the middle of my 3rd term at the present time. So it's a total of 10 years. My focus is to bring common sense to Salem, our common sense. I want to focus on education because it's an investment in our future, on transportation, broadband infrastructure, and housing.
Thank you very much. Suzanne, can you stay there for the first question? We'll ask, what skills, and this will build a little bit on your opening statement, what skills do you bring as a state representative that will help make Oregon better?
As in my time as mayor, I have worked on the Housing Commission, the Wellness Commission. I have been a part of economic development for Tillamook County. I have been the head of Tillamook County for 3 of those years. I have invested a lot of time in expanding my committee responsibilities to COLPAC, the Columbia Pacific Northwest Economic Development Council, and also the Northwest Act, which is the focus of ODOT. And I have also been on the Governor's Advisory Committee for Transportation. I think that those opportunities that have been given me have given me a chance to get to know more people in my area and to know more about the conditions in our area and what we need to work on.
Thank you. Debbie, I'll ask you the same question. What skills do you bring as a state representative that will help make Oregon better?
I was president of my local union for 6 years, and I advocated for better workers' rights and conditions. I have sat down at bargaining tables, and I have bargained contracts and come to solutions that both parties can agree upon. You go to a bargaining table, and you have wishes that you know you're not ever going to get all of them. But if you stay at that table until you come up with a solution that both parties can live with, you go away with a good feeling. I think that's something that's really important in Salem. You need to reach out to all stakeholders, talk to folks about all the issues that you're going to be looking at. And you stay at that table until you come up with a solution. You do not get up and leave without having a signed document.
Thank you. Debbie, we'll continue with the next question for you. What are your budget priorities and why? And what committees do you want to serve on?
Thank you. So it's really important to me when I'm looking at the budget that we're not cutting services that the vulnerable members of our community really rely upon. The budget is a very complex document, and it will take some studying to look at and see what programs we can and what programs we shouldn't be cutting. And I'm sorry, can you repeat?
The second part of the question was, what committees do you want to serve on?
Health, the Human Services, and Health and Mental Health committees.
Thank you. And Suzanne, we'll ask you the same question. What are your budget priorities and why? And then what committees do you want to serve on?
It's my philosophy that Oregon has a spending problem rather than a revenue problem. And I know that the revenues that were forecasted initially for the time of the COVID, we were going to be in dire straits, and that has not proven to be true. I believe that budget-wise, we need to concentrate on educating our children, and that those funds need to be memorialized, and they need to be it needs to be made sure that those funds exist for our future. As far as committees that I want to serve on, I want to serve on a committee that is involved in education, housing, and transportation.
Thank you very much. And so we'll move on to question 3 with you, Suzanne. Will you work to make corporate taxation more fair for Oregon? Do you have plans or support some plans for the restructure of the Oregon tax system?
As I said, we don't really have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. It's my philosophy that taxes need to be looked at across the board. The tax that is the cat tax, affectionately known as, is a glorified sales tax. We need to look at the structure of that and how that is impacting small business and how that is impacting everyday buyers. We have one store in our community that has the cat tax listed on every receipt, and let me tell you, that has caused a lot of anger and anxiety for people. That tax needs to be overhauled. And then you had a second part to that, I believe.
Yes. The second part, do you have plans or support some plans for the restructure of the Oregon tax system?
The restructure of the Oregon tax system needs to guarantee that we have enough money for education. And so, everything else is going to fall into place after that, because that is what our main focus has got to be.
Okay, thank you. Debbie will ask you the same question. Will you work to make corporate taxation more fair for Oregon? And the second part is, do you have plans or support some plans for the restructure of the Oregon tax system?
Yes, I think it is time that we look at what our corporate businesses are actually paying in taxes. The student success tax, which was just implemented in 2019, is a tax on large corporations to help fund our schools. I think it's very important that our large corporations are paying the same as what our small businesses are. As a small business owner, I pay my fair share in taxes. I can't afford the accountants to look for loopholes for me like they do big corporations. So yes, I will be looking at the tax structure when I get to Oregon and seeing where and who are not paying their fair share in taxes.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is question 4, and Debbie, we'll start with you again. Regarding the devastation of the Oregon fires and COVID-19 today and the probability of future earthquakes and floods, how important is Oregon disaster planning, and what does that mean to you as our representative?
Disaster planning is very important, and we need to make sure that we are reaching out to all of our communities and making sure that they are prepared for these disasters. We need to also make sure we're reaching out to our marginalized communities, because sometimes I think they get left behind and nobody reaches out to see what they need. So definitely, we need to make sure that we are ready for any disaster we might have.
Okay, thank you. Suzanne will ask you the same question. Regarding the devastation of the Oregon fires and COVID-19 today and the probability of future earthquakes and floods, how important is Oregon disaster planning, and what does that mean to you as our representative?
It's extremely important. It means that there needs to be funding at the educational level at Oregon State and through Dogami and all of the other state organizations that are researching and finding out what it is that we need to do and what the conditions of our coast are in case these things happen. We have several committees right now in Tillamook County that are working diligently to make sure that we are taking all of the safety measures into consideration. We meet on quarterly basis, and we meet on a monthly basis to check in to see what it is that our resiliency planning may be lacking or where we have to beef things up. As a city mayor, we have taken our city shop and we have used that as a storage area so that we can make sure that our employees are going to be taken care of when and if this happens, so that they and their families can be secure and then be ready to come back and work for the city to make sure that the rest of the community is going to be functioning. And those sorts of actions are taking place all up and down the coast by a very dedicated number of people. And so I appreciate that, and we have to continue to work on that.
Thank you very much. Suzanne, we'll ask question 5 to you. It's a lengthy one, so stick with me a bit. Clatsop County Measure 4-205 would prohibit enforcement of certain firearm regulations by county employees. If approved, it would prohibit enforcement of any of the following related to firearms: any tax, levy, or fee on the purchase or ownership of said items, any tracking requirements, background checks, confiscation orders, ownership of non-fully automatic firearms or accessories, and any restriction on the open or concealed carrying of firearms. What is your position on this measure?
Do you know something? That is a measure that I've been trying to wrap my head around. I am a gun advocate, and so I have reached out to several people to see exactly how this is going to impact our law enforcement, how this is going to impact our citizens. And I still, at this point in time, I think that there needs to be a lot more education as to how this is going to impact our community on all of those levels before we can make an intelligent decision about how we're going to vote. And I would encourage anyone who has the knowledge to be able to impart that information to the citizens to be out there and telling them how this is going to impact them. Because this is lengthy, this is wide, this is deep. This has got to be addressed, and there has to be an education component that goes along with it.
Thank you. Debbie will ask you the same question. I'll repeat it. Clatsop County Measure 4-205 would prohibit enforcement of certain firearm regulations by county employees. If approved, it would prohibit enforcement of any of the following related to firearms: any tax, levy, or fee on the purchase or ownership of said items, any tracking requirements, background checks, confiscation orders, ownership of non-fully automatic firearms or accessories, and any restriction on the open or concealed carrying of firearms. What is your position on this measure?
I grew up in Eastern Oregon in a hunting family, and I believe in responsible, safe ownership of guns. I do not believe this is something that we need to pass. I am supporting Sheriff Matt Phillips in his views. I feel it is important that we have our background checks to make sure that somebody that may hurt themselves or somebody else does not have a weapon. I also believe in the red flag laws for domestic violence. I think this is a bad bill, and I will be voting against it.
Thank you. Okay, now there's time for 2 minutes for closing statements, and so Debbie, will start with you.
Okay, thank you. I know what it's like to live in a rural area. I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. And I also know what it's like not knowing if you can put food on the table for your kids. As a small business owner, I have been navigating through the COVID crisis, and I know what it's like to make payroll in hard times. I want better for my constituents. This is why I am running for House District 32. I will not take money from big out-of-state corporations. No matter what happens on the federal level, I will fight for a woman's right of choice. I will fight to make sure that employers cannot terminate employees for their gender identification. I will not roll back funding for our schools, and I do support the Student Success Act. I will never walk out on a session. I will reach out to our stakeholders and have those uncomfortable conversations to come up with solutions and not obstructions. I will listen and give voice to our most vulnerable, and I will work for our community to ensure that we have a future where people are thriving in living wage jobs, in affordable housing, with quality education, affordable, and accessible health care, mental health care, substance abuse, and services for our veterans. I will support our small businesses. As your state representative, I will have an open door and an open mind and work to unite our district. Thank you very much tonight.
Thank you. And Suzanne, your closing statement.
Well, thank you. The first thing I want to do is thank you for the opportunity to come before you and to talk about some of these hard questions that need thoughtful answers. I'm endorsed by the Independent Party of Oregon. I'm on as their representative, and the Libertarian Party, and a really wide range of local citizens and organizations, and I have to tell you that I am very proud of my endorsements, and I'm really grateful for all of the support that has come from this area in my seeking this position. My focus is to bring our common sense to Salem. Education is an investment in our future. Our greatest natural resource is our children. Transportation and broadband infrastructure are vital for our survival, especially now in the time of COVID when education is virtual and we have 40% of our children who do not have internet accessibility. Those are things that need to be taken care of. Then we have the housing crisis that we also must address. If we have someone who is living in Longview and driving to Garibaldi to work, we've got to talk about that. We've got to make sure that that's taken care of for our folks. So once again, I want to say to you, thank you for having me here. I want to take our common sense to our people, to Salem. The ideas that we have are important, our values are important, and that's what needs to be reflected in Salem. Thank you.
Thank you both for your thoughtful answers. I appreciate your time, and I'd now like to call up to the podium the candidates for Astoria City Council Ward 2, Tom Brownson and Floyd Holcom. Good evening. Tom, I'd like to give you the opportunity to make an opening statement.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So my name's Tom Brownson, and I'm looking to get reelected. Whoop. Getting accustomed to my mask in public. Looking to get reelected to Ward 2 council person for the city of Astoria. So just real quickly, a brief history, who I am, where I've come from. In 1960, my family moved to Astoria. I was 7 years old, and we lived up in 14th and Jerome, and we were here for 4 years. My mother bought a restaurant in Cannon Beach, and we moved down there, and I grew up working in a restaurant from the time I was 10, pretty much full-time, taking a little break to work at the Sea Ranch as a guide on horses, which was pretty interesting to have a 13-year-old guiding people down the beach on large animals. I can't get away with that anymore. I moved to Portland in 73, 78. I ended up in Chicago where I worked for Skill Power Tools. I was a service center manager for 4 years. I went on to work for Makita Power Tools for 2 years as a regional service manager. In 1998, I returned back to the Oregon coast. I moved to Manzanita and opened up a power tool repair, sales and service shop. It was just me, kind of small, and eventually moved that business up to Gearhart. In 2003, I closed the business and went to work for Green Coast Landscaping, caretaking a property for a client, which I later went on to work for the client full-time as a caretaker of a 10-acre piece of property in Gearhart. In 2006, I bought property in Astoria, and then I also bought a float home out on the John Day River. I became a licensed contractor specializing in home repairs, minor remodeling, eventually taking on a partner. And I have the stop button already, so the opening remarks are pretty short.
Thank you, Tom.
Well, thank you.
You'll have more opportunity. Floyd, with your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Floyd Holcom, the owner of Pier 39 Astoria, a native Astorian, and your candidate for the Astoria City Council. I want to thank my alma mater, the Clatsop Community College, here for inviting me here tonight, KMU, and the Astoria chapter of the AAUW, Liz, Tom's wife, as president, as well as the Tri-Weekly Astorian for sponsoring tonight's event. I'm a proud Astorian, a product of generations of Astorians who worked hard and built a life here in Astoria, and one who was taught to give back to the community I grew up in. I spent nearly 30 years traveling throughout the world through higher education, government, and private sector work, all the while knowing I would return back to Astoria, my hometown, and give and raise my family, educate them in the same schools I went through, and develop a successful business to share with my community and visitors. In the last 56 years, I had great influential direction from former Astoria mayors, as well as Astorians who were city councilors, local business and port icons, local teachers, fellow combat veterans, childhood friends, bankers, lawyers, and judges, all from Astoria, people like yourself, who realize that there needs to be a fair, diversified balance on the Astoria City Council, and one that listens and acts to its broad citizen needs. My background is largely an open book. Thanks to Google and LinkedIn, I look forward to passing on my experience and the continuity of Astoria's history, including the needs of all of our citizens, while on this Astoria City Council. I look forward to your questions. Vote Floyd for Astoria City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Floyd. We'll have you stay up there for the first question, and this will build a little bit on your opening statement. What skills would you bring to the Astoria City Council that will help this community, and how much time are you willing to devote to serving as a city councilor?
Well, I've been asked to run, and thanks for the question. I have agreed to take on this position, and that means I'll be giving it 110%. What I bring to Astoria is what I've already brought to Astoria, and even more. A strong sense of community, a strong sense of balance, a strong sector of finance to understand the budgets, and as well as bring diversified thought to the City Council, as well as economic development and other major issues that Astoria needs to look at. I mean, we just hired a new community development director several months ago, and I haven't met her yet. So I think these are issues that not only small business people need to understand, but Astorians in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Floyd. Tom will ask you the same question. What skills would you bring to the Astoria City Council that will help this community, and how much time are you willing to devote to serving as a city councilor?
Well, I think the skills that I bring are common sense skills. One of the things that I think is really important, particularly in these days, is the ability to listen, to communicate well with fellow councilmen, to listen to the citizens of Astoria. I think that my years of experience both in business and just working with individuals in public and public service, I've found a way to be reasonable, calm, and thoughtful in my processes. With the second half?
The second was, how much time are you willing to devote to serving as city councilor?
The good news on that is that I'm recently retired, so I can give 110% as well. And I give whatever is needed. You know, it's important to, I have found, to take the time to look at the issues, to research them well, and really come in prepared whenever you have, because a lot of the decisions are complex, and in order to, you need to devote the time to understand how the code applies in that particular instance. So, I definitely.
Thank you very much. And Tom, we'll stay with you for a question
Sure.
too. Understanding that public safety, fire, and police must be a city's first priority, what other community services are most important to you?
You know, it's true about fire and police. Public works is huge. I mean, that's what makes the city, You know, people think about safety, they think of fire and they think of police, but when you talk about safe drinking water, safe sewage, you know, the condition of our streets and roads and infrastructure, it's all about public works. And we happen to have a very good public works team in place right now. We have some smart people. They work well with other agencies. In fact, you know, a lot of the bigger projects take the work on the bridge replacement out here. Huge project, millions of dollars. We were able to work with the state, leverage city dollars to accomplish that. And one of the reasons we're able to do that is because our Public Works Department has extraordinarily good relationship with other agencies, and particularly state agencies and granting agencies. They will come to Astoria and say, hey, we've got money over here, can you use it? Because they follow through in all their work, they're on time, and they're efficient. So, you know, people take water and sewage for granted, and infrastructure sometimes not so much for granted. You got some bad roads out there and you hit some bumps, you know, that's a challenge because, again, funding is a challenge. So I think that would be the best answer to that question. I think all city, you know, community development is very important, building codes and how we apply them and how we allow people to do business here is also very important because safety is a huge aspect of that.
Thank you very much. Floyd, we'll ask you the same question. Understanding that public safety, fire, and police must be a city's first priority, what other community services are most important to you?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Absolutely, all of the three are important, as I'm very familiar with. Having spent many times on the counter-drug task force of our community, I can look at several areas in our society here in Astoria that need more communication, and they do an awesome job at that work. My biggest focus is really getting back to community communication. The citizen communities, committees that we have are really extremely important. From all of the levels of government right now, there seems to be some question amongst the citizens' mind. Otherwise, they wouldn't have asked me to run, because they ask a lot of questions and don't get a lot of answers. And so I think that across the board, above the public service sector, that needs to be answered for each one of them to bring the citizens more closer to City Hall. There's questions out there that people don't even know who their city manager are right now. And so I think with that, getting closer and closer to the public's needs, we will be able to advance the needs of our city government beyond what Tom has naturally talked about today as part of any government. But we really need to get back to those public work issues on streets that haven't been fixed. Commercial Street hasn't been fixed. It took me years to get Arlene to fix Bond Street. These are issues that the citizens want to get fixed, and that's what's really important for a local government.
Okay, thank you. Floyd, we'll stay with you for the third question. How important is disaster planning, and what would you do to better inform the public of Astoria's disaster plans?
Well, I think you asked that question right for me, because I've been working on disaster plans for the last 25 years. You know, as a former Green Beret, we look at disasters as a reality. As many of you probably know, I spent 2007 in the bunker when we had the hurricane force winds, helping out our entire county during that disaster. So I have a strong emergency management perspective. Just this week, I asked a question that I asked Craig Hoppes almost 6 years ago. With the advancement of all these new school bonds, have you got emergency generators at the middle school yet? And the answer was no. These were the same after-action reports that we requested in 2007. The development of the salvage chief was primarily looked at by government agencies, knowing how important our community is for sustainability, reactions, emergency actions, and I bring that leadership to the City Council. Well, quite frankly, there's nobody there right now that are addressing those emergency needs. And our schools are very important to have those, almost like the old civil defense aspects in the old days, focusing on those areas that need to be well supplied and prepared for our next disaster.
Okay, thank you. Tom, I'll ask you the same question. How important is disaster planning, and what would you do to better inform the public of Astoria's disaster plans?
Well, I think disaster planning is really important, and I think that the city and the county and the state have been working to focus on those issues. As a city councilor, I don't have the experience that Floyd talks about. Disaster readiness is not my forte. What I do is I count on the people who it's their job to work with others and develop disaster planning. And that's what our city government, one has to understand that it's a system that the council, we don't run it, we don't drive it, we inform it, we do try and set policy, strongly led by the mayor. And by the way, we have a mayor who happened to lead the helicopter rescue effort in Hurricane Katrina. So we have somebody who has that experience on the council. And I think that we are very lucky to have that right now, particularly in these times of COVID. And you know, when a disaster hits, if he's there, we will have somebody in a leadership position who can really help this city. So my job as a counselor is to support those efforts and to, when they're brought forward and brought to us, to scrutinize it and make sure that they are following protocol and moving in the right direction. One of the issues that we have with any city, particularly small rural cities, is resources. And it's easy to say, oh, we should do this or we should have that. But to find the resources to actually get it is another question.
Thank you, Tom. We'll stay with you for the next question. What are your views on easing or tightening restrictions on construction along the Riverwalk?
Well, I think that's sort of been done. So the council that I've been on has spent the last year and a half doing a lot of work on code revision along the riverfront. The Bridge Vista overlay, which is between downtown and the port, came under a lot of public interest, let's say, when we, as a council, in a 3-2 vote, allowed a 4-story hotel to be built on the waterfront. When going through the appeal that came to the council concerning that, looking at the development code as it existed, and this was a fairly recent development code. It was established in about 2000 and, well, not even, it was more recent than 2007. I think they started working on it, but I think about a year before I came on council, they finalized an existing overlay for the Bridge Vista. And, you know, I found some really interesting anomalies in there. It was challenging to get a good interpretation. And I also found that, and there were some contradictions in the code. As a result, you know, we ended up with a business coming to Astoria to try and put up a hotel and, you know, play by the rules and bring it to the Planning Commission, only for it to be rejected, and what I thought was a bit of activism on that committee's part. And I think when it came to council, we had an opportunity to correct that, because I think they need that opportunity. Any business coming in and trying to do business, they need to have clear understanding of what the rules are. Now, since then, well, I'm going to have to stop here, but you get the idea.
Yep, thank you, Tom. Floyd, will ask you the same question. What are your views on easing or tightening restrictions on construction along the Riverwalk?
Well, obviously, I have the largest waterfront property in Astoria, and I've worked these issues for the last 25 years, and I think it's extremely important. You know, there's a contradiction a lot in the easing and restrictions of waterfront development that probably hasn't hit our fair community since 1965, or even when Bumblebee left in 1981. And so a lot of these waterfront properties have been neglected because of the fact of not poor or not clear communication between the city and property owners and future developers. This city relies on new blood of entrepreneurs. And of course, they're going to gravitate to the waterfront because that's where the value of view is in businesses. And we saw with last councilor, Eddie McKay, another local Astorian who was very adamant about the ability to maintain the working waterfront. And I'm absolutely for that addition to keeping the working waterfront active. So that balance really needs to be communicated to the city council from its constituents. The ability to look at the properties they own and seek a community development director that gives them a focus of what the future is going to be at so they don't waste their money. And right now we have a huge miscommunication between people who want to come to Astoria and invest and the goals and traditions of what the existing city council are. And that's why we need to do better. We really do. Thank you.
Thank you. Floyd and Will, stick with you for question 5 here. How can the city best support local businesses during the COVID-19 crisis?
Excellent question. Thank you. Well, anything right now would be fantastic. The challenge us business people have is the fact that right now we're getting some great communication with the local Chamber of Commerce, the local Clatsop Community Small Business Development Center. Obviously, we've got some issues at the city level. We just got our community development director on board. Many of us businesses haven't even met her yet. We don't know what her vision of community development are, that outreach to the businesses to try to rally up the forces of huge problems with COVID. And every small business in Astoria right now is asking for communication. Where to go, the challenges with the different communications with the Oregon Health Authority. And so the city has a big role there, because if you don't support your small businesses to understand what these issues are, how do you attract more businesses to come in its place? And that's what we need to continue here with our outreach with our city council, as well as the staff that is supporting the city manager. We need communication. Small business needs those roles so they know where the avenues are, where they can seek assistance. And so right now it's the Chamber of Commerce and Small Business Development Center through Clatsop Community College. It's been very weak on the city government side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Floyd. And Tom will ask you the same question. How can the city best support local businesses during the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, here we have to be realistic. The city has, again, it's a resource issue. So the city needs to communicate, and the city does communicate. My opponent has talked about the Chamber of Commerce and the Small Business Administration and CEDAR, who's a representative who, the Clatsop Economic Development Resource, does a lot of work and does all that work in conjunction with our city staff. We are mutually supportive. There's, you know, this talk about communication I think it's just not true. Our city government, our city manager communicates on a regular basis with all these entities. And if you talk about, so the city doesn't have a lot of resources. We don't have a lot of money. In fact, we're going to be taking, and already are starting to take a hit on revenues. We've had to let people go. We have 70 people that, mostly part-timers, that were working 3 or 4 months ago, that are gone. And the only reason they're gone is because we don't have the money to pay them right now. And until we get a handle on where we're going to be with resources in the coming months, there's a limit to what we can do. Now, that being said, again, we've worked hard with CEDAR, with the Chamber of Commerce, but particularly CEDAR, to make sure that state and federal funds and grants are getting into the community. Right now, we have identified $40,000 with the city that we are going to be putting small business grants and loans over and on top to help support the small businesses of downtown or across the city. you know, and we know that this is important, and we will do everything we can, and we do listen, and we do communicate.
Thank you very much. And Tom, why don't you stay up there, and
Sure.
You have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you. So I just want to say, I'm going to run down a list here. I believe in fairness. This goes for individuals, groups, and businesses. I believe that how the city staff works with citizens needs to be fair and helpful. I think that once city has established development guidelines, we need to abide by them. Developers, wherever they come from, need to know upfront what the rules are and are able to tailor their plans and move forward so that as long as they meet the requirements, they need not be arbitrarily rejected. The council I've been part of has been the busiest in recent history when it comes to land use development. I've studied, I've learned a lot. I take it seriously, taking the time necessary to understand the issues at hand and make informed decisions. I feel it is important to hear from as many people as possible. I will help bring continuity. I think having a second 4 years allows me to bring all I've learned and the relationships I've established throughout the community forward. We have a lot of work to do, and I'm up for it. Having these 4 years of experience serving on the city council, I've built relationships with city staff and fellow council members and a good working relationship with the mayor. I'm fair-minded. I tackle issues with an open mind, and I'm looking to identify my biases to determine if they are valid concerning matters at hand. I'm responsive to my constituents and to the citizens of Astoria in general. I will listen and help and work out issues they have, bringing their concerns to staff and council as needed. I will also give people and issues the benefit of the doubt. My decisions were made using the best information and evidence available to me and judgment tempered by experience and honest evaluation. Thank you. And I want to thank the college, and I want to thank all the people who have supported me. I want to thank my wife, Liz, for all her support that she's given me. And I even want to thank my opponent for being there, because it makes me a better candidate, and it makes me a better counselor when I'm elected. So vote for Brownson.
Thank you. Floyd, for your statement.
Thank you very much. Tonight you heard questions and answers that were supposed to be presented to both of us for the first time. If you have a doubt that this city government is working for you, then there is no doubt. Who asked me to run for this city council position? It was not the mayor, Bruce Jones, or his campaign manager, or even the current city manager. Do you know his name? It was not the fact that 4 other people on the city council asked me to run. I haven't talked to anybody. It wasn't former Mayor Arlene Lemire. It wasn't the chairman of the Port of Astoria, Dirk Rohn. It was not tonight's sponsor, KMUN. And all of you know why. The people who asked me to run for city council was you. The nonpartisans, the apoliticals, the people who just want balance to their city government and to function like any other nonpartisan city. Yes, it was the Astorians that have not had a voice. The small business owner that was not being heard, the Astorians who have lived in the South Slope Ward 2 area that don't even know that their city council's name is Tom Brownson. The unemployed workers that are still trying to get their unemployment checks. The single mothers, the native retired Astorians, those Astorians that are moving back and those that just moved to our community in the last few years. Astorians petitioned me to run for what is supposed to be a nonpartisan city council. And because of you, not me, Floyd is going to be your next city councilor. Thank you very much. Thank all of you.
And again, I want to thank both of you for your interest in running for city council. It's a very important position. I would now like to call up candidates for Astoria City Council Ward 4. And the first speaker will be Thomas Hilton. Okay, Thomas, I'd like to give you 2 minutes to make an opening statement.
Good evening. Thank you, American Association of University Women, my alma mater, Clatsop Community College, KMUN, and those of you participating in tonight's Candidates Forum. I'm Tom Hilton, and I'm running for Astoria City Council Ward 4. You see, I grew up in Uniontown. My dad was a longshoreman. He was a gill netter. My mom was a Cowles Prairie Indian. And they gave to their community. I'm a commercial fisherman. I'm a casual longshoreman. I'm a current business owner, Pier 39. I own Hanthorn Crab Company. So if you wondered why I'm running for city council, I'm doing it for Jake. Jake Jacob came to me and said, I need to be involved in my community. Yeah. So I became involved. You see, I had a daily Astorian paper route in Uniontown. I went to Gray School. I went to Astoria Middle School. And I graduated class of '82, Astoria High. And I went to Clatsop Community College. And everything I learned within my community was to give. My parents gave, my mom gave, and I'm going to give. And that's what I'm going to do for the people in Ward 4 in Astoria. I'm going to give. I'm going to listen, and I want to be ready to be your city councilor for Ward 4. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joshua, let's go ahead with your opening statement.
Well, thank you everyone for inviting me here, and thank you for letting me be part of this forum. My name is Joshua Conklin. As you know, I'm running for Ward 4. A little bit about me: I grew up here. I grew up out in Lewis and Clark, so I did not grow up in the city limits. My dad was a pastor of Lewis and Clark Bible Church, and my upbringing was pretty great here. Thank you very much. Sorry. My journey to running for public office probably started in high school. For my senior project, I did a documentary on underage drinking in Clatsop County. I knew that drinking was a big problem here. My grandmother had died from getting hit by a drunk driver. And from doing that, I got involved on the Reduced Underage Drinking Task Force, which introduced me to a lot of key figures in social services here in Astoria, as well as introduced me to the then Dean of Students at Clatsop Community College. I was going to attend there the following year after graduating high school, and he encouraged me to apply for student government here. I was a very shy person at that time. I was homeschooled till high school, and so that adjustment from not being overly socialized to that abrupt socialization was quite a shock. And student government really got me out of my shell, as well as got me involved with with a few other people, put together a club called the Green Initiative, which we started commingled recycling up here at Clatsop, and got bins in every single classroom, as well as did a lot of cleaning up cigarette butts and other things like that. I've also volunteered at the Harbor. I did the advocate training there, as well as was on the steering committee for the Q Center, as well as was on the planning committee for Astoria Pride. I care a lot about this community. I care a lot about the people in it, and I want to see everyone be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Lisa, go ahead with your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening. As was stated, I'm Lisa Morley, and I'm running for Ward 4 City Council position. I'm honored to be here with these two other gentlemen. I think we all have Ward 4 and Astoria at our heart. We're looking for the best thing for our ward. This city council vote is an important decision for Astoria, and I'm here because I bring a balanced view, such as I value the environment while also understanding the need for a strong local economy. Balanced also means being able to work well with the city without automatically deferring to their judgment. I'm a scientist by training and by occupation, so research and data, specifically validated data, are a passion of mine. I believe there's always common ground, no matter what the issue is, and I have years of experience finding solutions using the skill of collaboration. A win-win is not when everyone has to give up something just to get an agreement. That's a lose-lose. A win-win is when we look at many potential solutions, and in doing so, we learn new and often better ways to solve problems, including long-existing problems. Solutions that are not only agreeable, but also benefit most, if not all, stakeholders. Everyone in Astoria needs a real chance to get involved in projects such as the safety of our community, developing more local businesses, including our fishing economy, meeting our growing traffic concerns, addressing affordable housing issues, and continuing to enhance our outdoor spaces for our young and our more experienced population alike. I love Astoria, and I would like to see us maintain the livability and the quaintness of this place we call home. I'm asking for your vote to represent Ward 4 in these and other pursuits, and I look forward to answering your questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I need Joshua to come back forward. I'm sorry about that. No, you're fine. And Lisa, you can just stay there. It's a little bit of a challenge to juggle three, and I certainly shouldn't be in charge of this, but good luck, candidates. All right. So, Joshua, I'll ask you question one. What skills would you bring to the Astoria City Council that will help this community, and how much time are you willing to devote to serving as a city councilor?
I think my biggest skill is communication by far. I am constantly engaged in our community, having conversations with business owners as well as individuals of facing the concerns that we all have and looking at ways to best resolve those. I'm also a very dedicated hard worker. I've worked multiple jobs at a time. I'm willing to put the energy and the time in to help everyone. And
yeah, so I think you answered the second part, which is how much time are you willing to devote to serving as city councilor?
yeah, and I think my life is very busy for sure, and I think that's what's always the struggle with getting individuals like me on city council, is we do balance a lot of things. I work a full-time job as well as I put on shows, I volunteer a lot, I do a lot of different things, but I feel like it is the right time for me to get involved and make a difference and let the people that feel like they haven't been heard be heard. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Lisa will ask you the same question. What skills would you bring to the Astoria City Council that will help this community, and how much time are you willing to devote to serving as a city councilor?
I believe I bring a lot of experience, perhaps not in government, but in working with businesses to help them improve culture and solving problems at the root cause. So in my experience with the city council, I go to as many meetings as I can, back when they were in person or virtually, even at the time when I was traveling a lot, to make sure I was staying informed of what was going on in our community. So I've done some work in my neighborhood of Alderbrook and taken that to city council, so I have some experience there. But again, I think my real strength is in looking at problems and finding out what the root cause of the problem is before we ever get into what the best solution is. Because if you don't know what the root cause is, sometimes you can solve it right there. And a lot of times, communication. I've heard a lot of talk about communication tonight, and I couldn't agree more strongly that more effective communication from the council is necessary and drastically needed. I think that would solve a lot of problems right there. But again, finding out the root cause, then putting in the analysis, and most importantly, getting feedback and solutions from the people that are involved and most affected by the problems and are going to be most affected by the proposed solutions. So that would be my goal with city council, and I would be willing to take, I've seen, I watch and listen to the councilors about how much time they spend right now, so I do understand the dedication of time that's going to be necessary to be effective in this position, so I'm prepared for that and willing to put that time in.
Okay, thank you. And you can just remain at the podium as well, because you'll be first for the next question. Tom, go ahead. The same question is, what skills would you bring to the Astoria City Council that will help this community, and how much time are you willing to devote to serving as a city councilor?
I bring skills as a effective communicator, a person who listens and solves problems. I bring my skills as a small business owner so I can relate to the businesses within my district, ward, and within the community. I bring my experience of negotiating businesses like in Alaska during strikes with companies like Marubeni, massive trading companies. I bring skills of experience, wisdom, and knowledge, the ability to listen. I think the most important thing is what I bring Astoria. I speak for Astorians. I listen to the Astorians. The people of my neighborhood ask me to do this. That's what I bring. How much time am I willing to invest? As much time as it takes to get the job done so that our community is safe and that people can sleep at night comfortably and not have to worry about where their next meal comes from or if the lights are going to go out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lisa, we'll move on to question 2 for you, and Tom, you can just remain right there. Understanding that public safety, fire and police must be a city's first priority, what other community services are most important to you?
I was listening with great interest during this question with the other representatives, and again, couldn't agree more strongly. Safety is actually what I do for a living, day in and day out with Fortune 50 companies around the world. For me, in addition to those 3 is education. Education, along with communication is the solution to all problems. So education, I think, is so critical. I think in our current state, not only healthcare, but specifically mental health care, I think is a vast need for most communities, and I think we've done a disservice for people in that area. I think that's critically important. And then I think it was Floyd that said citizen committees. I feel like we have really lost touch with the citizens of Astoria. I listen to so many council meetings, and it seems like so much of this should have been solved before it ever got to that level, and that having more involvement from all of the citizens of Astoria would be a better solution than having things escalate to where it has to go to city council.
Step away and we'll let Joshua come up. Tom, I'll ask you the same question. Understanding that public safety, fire and police must be a city's first priority, what other community services are most important to you?
Public works, water. Water is probably the most important resource that we have in our region. We need to make sure that we prioritize our water and it's protected. Where it comes from, we need to ensure quality water for our people. That also includes runoff. That includes water runoff. And I take a look at West Commercial Street, and I look at that. That issue right there, to me, is an issue. Yeah, we got the bridge work done, got all that done, but Commercial Street, West Commercial Street, Bond Street is still a slide area. And I don't know if our city has learned from that experience. Water is a valuable commodity, valuable resource, but it's also very dangerous. And I think our public works, public safety, it's all intertwined into water here in our community. Also with water safety for water rescue and things like that. I mean, I can talk here for 25 minutes maybe, but I'll just keep it short.
All right, thanks, Tom. And just stay there, you'll be first on the next question. Joshua, the same question for you. Understanding that public safety, fire and police must be a city's first priority, what other community services are most important to you?
I think one that we haven't talked about is Parks and Rec. I think of things like the Aquatic Center, who is really struggling financially right now to get back open, is one thing that I think everyone in the community, a lot of people in the community really like to use. I think back of the times that I have gone there and done like aerobics with my friend, and I think especially with where we are right now when it comes to COVID, having outdoor spaces that are adequately maintained, I think is really important. I think of the Riverwalk and how we all love to walk the Riverwalk, and there's been times that it wasn't adequately maintained when it came to overflowing garbages or the fact that there's minimal public restrooms. I would like to see us have more of that, that makes these areas more inviting and makes people utilize them more. I also think we can go into housing is a really big issue in Astoria. Homelessness is a really big issue in Astoria. I think that we do have the resources around, but I think there needs to be more energy put into those. There needs to be more advocates for the homeless population to find them housing and to work through the issues that they're facing. So, yes, that's what I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can just stay there, Joshua. We'll come to you pretty quickly with the next question. And Tom, we're going to start question 3 with you. How important is disaster planning, and what would you do to better inform the public of Astoria's disaster plans?
I'll ask you the question.
Do you know where to go if something happens?
I can't answer that.
I'm asking everyone. Do they know? Do they know where emergency preparedness is if there was a natural disaster to happen right now? Is our community prepared for that? Is there backup generators? Is there food? Is there water? Do the people in my district, my ward, my community, my city know where to go if there's an earthquake, if there's a tsunami? Do they know what to do? I don't think our community is prepared at all. If it is, I don't see it because I don't know. I'm a business owner. And I have not seen anything that informs me. There's no flyers. There's no information. I don't even get an email that tell me where would I go if there was a flood or a tsunami. Where would I go if there was a fire? Where's food and water? Where's generators? Where's stuff available for our community? That's what we need to know. We need to make sure that our community and our citizens know where that stuff is. And if I'm a city councilor, I will make sure that our citizens, my citizens, the people in my community, Astorians, know where to go and that they can get food, water, safety, clothing, stay warm, get shelter. We need backup generators. We need all those things to protect our community. I don't think we're prepared for anything, and we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Joshua will ask you the same question. How important is disaster planning, and what would you do to better inform the public of Astoria's disaster plans?
I think it's extremely important. I think that one of the biggest things that we have to think about is the marginalized populations, as well as the individuals that don't have internet access or cell phones that are easily seeing this information as much as we are. How do you get that information to them of where are the proper areas to go, as well as once we have a disaster, do we have the adequate shelters and food and resources for them? I know that it's something that there is groups that are working towards, but I think that creating better partnerships with them and helping them elevate what they're already doing, I think that's one of the things that's great about Astoria is there's a lot of people that are already doing these things. I think it's just that extra help. We rely a lot of times on volunteers, and it would be nice to get revenue towards these areas to have paid positions that they have more time to dedicate to those issues.
Thank you, Joshua. And just remain there. You'll be up pretty quickly. Lisa, the question 3 to you. How important is disaster planning, and what would you do to better inform the public of Astoria's disaster plans?
So, again, that is part of what I do every day for work is help my organizations not only learn how to work more safely, but plan for emergencies. I work with a lot of companies that in the routine business can kill a lot of people. So creating an emergency response team is something that I do for a living. When I moved here, the first thing I did at City Hall was look through the flyers there, and there were some flyers in there about tsunami and emergency. That's all I've ever seen. That's all I've ever seen. So, you know, when I came in here tonight, the first thing I asked for was, you know, about where the emergency exits, fastest place to get out in case we do have an emergency. So that's part and parcel of who I am and what I do and what I have a passion for. I have never, in my time here, seen an emergency response practice done. It should happen on an annual basis for the city. It should happen in the schools on a routine basis. They should be practicing not only for emergency, for weather conditions, but also for active attacker situations. Those should be practiced on a routine basis. People don't like to think about that, but that needs to happen. That's a reality in our world today. And as far as communication, same thing. As simple as the hotels up and down this coast and the Airbnbs, that should be part and parcel of those businesses. When somebody checks in, they should have the information about what are you supposed to do, what alarms, what sirens, and what do they mean? When you hear those, where should you go? And that communication plan is part of all the other communication plans that this city needs to do a more effective job of communicating, just like everybody's saying. Not everybody has the internet. Not everybody has a cell phone. So not, you know, homeless people, everybody needs to be involved in this, and we have to create that emergency response team to manage this.
just remain at the podium. You'll be up pretty quickly for the next question. Joshua, I'm going to start question 4 with you. What are your views on easing or tightening restrictions on construction along the Riverwalk?
I believe sustaining what we already have on the Riverwalk. I think the Riverwalk is beautiful, and I love walking down it. I think that there's a lot of people that want to come and develop. I think we need to look into how we can create more innovative ways, because we do have an issue with housing. And so how can we look at ways, like there's some cities that will have they require hotels to have a certain amount of housing for the amount of hotel rooms they have. Because right now the hotels are going to come in pretty much regardless of what we're going to be doing. We can try to stop it, but there will be a lot of energy towards that. And so what are ways that we can work with people to best help everyone in our community? And that's what I would say. Thanks. Sorry, short.
Thank you. Lisa, I'll ask you the same question. What are your views on easing or tightening restrictions on construction along the Riverwalk?
Well, that's a big question for 2 minutes, but the short, down and dirty, I think, is I believe we have the ability to maintain the views of the Riverwalk. That's critically important to me. I don't think anything should happen to people's views. I don't think the highest bidder should be able to take views away from other people. I think everybody has a right to the riverfront, the Riverwalk, and the river views. At the same time, I think there's a lot of business development that can happen even with the existing structures that will draw more people, both local and visitors, to the waterfront to experience the beauty of Columbia River. I was talking to my brother today in St. Louis, and he was talking about in all his travels, the Columbia River is the most beautiful river. I was like, I know. That's why I live on the Columbia River. But things like the Sears building, that could be turned into a wonderful, large eating establishment that would meet COVID requirements and has that spectacular view already built. You don't have to take any views away. So we have the ability to do both. We have the ability to keep the views and still develop businesses that are going to be beneficial for our local economy, for our local people that live here, and that will give our guests, our visitors who want to come visit here, safe places to enjoy our spectacular waterfront.
Thank you very much. Tom will ask you the same question. What are your views on easing or tightening restrictions on construction along the Riverwalk?
Well, if those pilings could talk, what tales would they weave? Those pilings built this community. That river built this community. Yeah, we can all look at it and see how nice it is, but I want to ask the river, what does it think by looking at us? So that's the real question. I mean, what I think that if people have existing rights to build on that waterfront and they fall within the code, the rules, and the vision plan for Astoria, then they ought to be able to develop that, because the river is our most valuable asset. If we're not going to build up, then we need to build out. That river can do a lot for us. We just need to let it happen. It's the future for us. It's our past. There's a lot of people that, we like to look at it and walk and look at it, but it's not bringing us any jobs. It's not paying for schools. It's not paying taxes. So we have to think of a creative way to make that river more valuable by letting it be developed, by preserving certain areas, by creating more park space for it, protecting scenic vistas, no doubt. But we also need to let current land use owners develop that property. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Tom, you can stay there. You'll be up early on the next question. Lisa, I'm going to ask you question 5. How can the city best support local businesses during the COVID-19 crisis?
It's a tough question, and again, back to communication. There's a lack of communication. I have talked to a lot of business owners. They don't know who to reach out to. They don't know, things change, the rules change, and how is that being communicated, and what are they supposed to do in the meantime? And you have to wear a mask, you don't have to wear a mask. You got to keep it just changes constantly, but the lack of communication is the number one. How can they maintain their business at some level to where they can keep income, most importantly, where they can keep their employees being paid at some level, but they don't know. It's all rumors. They're looking on websites. They're listening to other business owners, but specifically knowing and having at least a single point of contact with some daily update, some daily communication, some in-person meetings about what's the current status, asking them, what do you need? What can we do for you? What do you not know, or what do you not have that you need to be able to keep some income coming in to support yourself, your families, and your employees, to support them and to support their families? So again, it's just, they don't know what they don't know. So some people make it up because they're just trying to figure it out the best they can. So we have to close that gap, and it's got to be much more proactive than I feel like it's being right now.
Thank you very much. And if you could step away, and we'll let Joshua come up. Tom, will ask you the same question. How can the city best support local businesses during the COVID-19 crisis?
Go to the business and buy something. Go to the business and talk to the owner. Talk to the people that work there. I have not seen anyone that represents my city other than Jessamine come to my business. She's the only one. That's it. That's how we support business. Myself, if I was elected to city council, I'd go to the businesses. I'd go to everyone. I'd go to Safeway. I'd go to Comfort Suites. I'd go to Annie's. I'd go to all of them and ask them what they need and what I can do. That is the thing. We need to frequent the businesses and spend money there. And we also need to let them know what's available to them. Clatsop Community College, Cedar, Kevin Leahy, Jessica Newhall, they're doing amazing work. They're doing a great job. But it's up to all of us, really. But like I said, if I'm elected to city council, I'm going out there. I'm going to go see those business owners. I'm going to go talk to them. I want to know what they want. I want to feel their heartbeat. I want to know the pulse. And being a business owner and not seeing anybody, not my mayor, not once, in 9 months. Nope, hasn't come by, said anything to me, wished me well or nothing. That's why we need it. We need communication at that level. We need to walk around. Yeah, there's a lot of businesses downtown, Uniontown, Upper Town, but everybody needs it. So I think earlier the question was, how much time am I willing to invest? I'm willing to invest a lot more time than what I see is going on. I am willing to do a lot more for my community, because that's what our community needs. What is the future of our community? The future is our businesses, our entrepreneurs, and the businesses that currently exist. We need Safeway. We need Comfort Inn. We need Holiday Inn. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. And you can just stay there, Tom. You'll be up next. Joshua will ask you the same question. How can the city best support local businesses, during the COVID-19 crisis? I hope you got that. You want me to repeat that?
No, it's all great. I think if anybody knows me, they know I spend a lot of time going to businesses in Astoria. I spend a huge chunk of my own money, restaurants, at shops. Whenever I have a friend's birthday, I always make sure to buy something locally. My experiences with having conversations with business owners in Astoria is that the city council has reached out to them. I was just talking to a bar owner recently who said that Bruce Jones specifically called them and asked what type of concerns they had. But I think that the one issue is that's all within the downtown. There's areas outside of that within Upper Town and Uniontown that the businesses do get a little neglected. I think we put a lot of emphasis on the downtown, which is, the downtown is a great place to go, but we have other parts of Astoria that are also great. I think during this pandemic, it's a really stressful time because you're on one side, you don't have the government assistance financially, or it's hard to obtain. And at the same time, you want to be safe and you want to follow all the guidelines. And so to make money that makes sense and that's safe is pretty difficult. I think one of the things I noticed within Astoria is all the outdoor seating, and that's something that a lot of restaurants started doing is city made exceptions to the ordinances to allow outdoor seating at all these restaurants and bars that made it so that they could make more revenue and allow people to have a safer space that wasn't within indoors. So thank you.
All right, thank you, and just stay there. Tom, we'll go to you for your closing statement. You have 2 minutes.
Civic duty. With the help of city council members, the mayor, and citizens of Ward 4, I seek community involvement in shaping the livability and sustainability of Astoria and our economy without sacrificing the natural beauty. I will listen, I will work. I will help navigate Astoria with a memory of the past and a vision of the future. We need leadership that listens and responds to the citizens of Astoria. Leadership that will make decisions based on rules, codes, and plans that have been set forth by our citizens. We need fairness. I'm the candidate for fairness. Protecting for our watershed, our most valuable natural resources, water. Water is our most valuable resource. Do we have enough water for future demands or in case of an emergency? Transportation. Planning for future repairs and increased demand, working with the Department of Transportation for Oregon to try and alleviate congestion and improve public safety. Why am I running? Civic pride. What binds me to Astoria is the fishing industry, the working waterfront. We all love the Riverwalk, the maritime history of Astoria. The gateway to the Sunset Empire built this region and its prosperity. If we have learned anything from those that came before us, we need to plan ahead. We need a plan. We need to take control of our future, or our future will have its way with us. The economic future of Astoria, combining the past, our history with the future needs of citizens, our families, our friends, and children's children, planning for natural disasters. We need a plan. Our community involvement in shaping the livability and sustainability of our economy without sacrificing the natural beauty, creating a gateway to the Sunset Empire. Thank you. Tom Hilton, Ward 4.
Thank you, Tom. Joshua, 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Everything I do, I always lead with compassion and empathy. I think those are the two most important attributes that anybody can have. I think with any leader, I think that's what is the most important things you can have. Actively listening and engaging in our community and seeing the concerns and trying to address them is what makes a good city councilor. I think that we for sure have a big housing crisis. We have a huge housing issue in Astoria. What are our best ways to combat that? We have businesses that are extremely struggling. How do we combat that? I think that one of the things that I have going for myself is having connections, knowing lots of people, and always listening and always asking and engaging in our community. Astoria has given a lot to me, and Astoria has helped me in my growth as a person, and I would love to give that back. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joshua. Lisa, we'll go to you for your closing statement.
Thank you for your time this evening. I ask for your vote because my other passion is to represent you, your thoughts, your wishes, your concerns, and most importantly, your solutions for Ward 4 and for Astoria. I was also asked by my neighbors to get in the race for Ward 4. I put together a group a few years ago to save Birch Park and Field, and was successful in that, putting the organization together, meeting weekly with them to come up and formulate a plan, again using the skills of collaboration. What did people want to see happen with that park, and was successful in that. Then this year, we put toys out in the park for the kids to use, so their parents, and provided sanitation for them so the parents could get out of the house after they were locked up with their kids with COVID, and they could all get out in fresh air. And as a result of that, I was asked, and so with Birch Park, I have proven my ability to gather feedback, to take information and represent your wishes to the City Council and win. I'd now like to use those same skills for other issues and concerns. I have the right heart for the future of Ward 4 and for Astoria. So please vote for me, Lisa Morley, because in truth, a vote for me is actually a vote for you. And if you'd like one of my yard signs, I'd be most appreciative. I'd be happy to deliver them to you. Of course, practicing all COVID protocol. You can contact me on my Facebook page, Lisa Morley for Astoria City Council, or at lisa.g.morley@gmail.com. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you to all the candidates for Ward 4. This ends our candidate forum, but I would just like to say I think we'll be well represented by any of the candidates tonight. They all represented themselves well, and our county, our region, and the city of Astoria will be in sound hands, whoever wins that, whoever wins these races. The last thing I would say is that voting is probably the most important thing we can do as citizens of the United States, and I encourage everyone to do so. Become informed and vote. And I wish you all a good evening. Stay safe, and hopefully you can enjoy the rest of the week. And don't forget to register for classes in the winter at Clatsop Community College. Julie made me say that. Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.